that dog don't hunt. But. So
Yes.
you got
yes, I've got
various news bits.
A small handful of stories here. If we want to go ahead and put the number up, we definitely can do that.
Sure.
And also, as we were saying just a few minutes ago about, again, evolution and Jesus and stuff like that, if anyone out there can link these two together and say why we would need Jesus, even though there was no original sin, or is that a bad
or maybe
statement? Was there original sin, but we still evolved, or who knows? You know, one of the monkeys did something off limits.
Well, you know, evolution occurred, but God came down and tinkered with monkeys at some point and turned them into humans, and then they sinned, and then that was okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah,
kind of contrived.
yeah, the more you have to kind of revisit and rationalize your story every time we come up with some new understanding about reality, the less reasonable your story sounds.
Yeah.
You can tap dance all you want, but, and you know, these are issues that I actually find interesting. So as a reminder, if you can see the number, we're probably live because you normally would put like pre-recorded right here over the number. But it is Sunday, January 13th, 2008.
Yes. And
you're free to call in to talk about the topic we were just discussing.
Anything at all.
Any of
Any
Ashley's
questions.
news articles or anything you'd like. Particularly, as I pointed out in several weeks in the past, I'm interested not only in what you believe and why, but why you think anybody else should believe it as well.
Yeah.
Or if you don't. Maybe you're one of the people who thinks that all of this is private and not up for discussion, shouldn't be. Well,
in which case, we need to discuss that.
Yes, we need to discuss that with you.
All right.
So we can call you a hypocrite. Aha, gotcha.
All right. A couple things here. First off, The View. That's this, I think it's daily, kind of chat show, talk show that's on. And it's got Whoopi Goldberg and a couple other people, and they just discuss various news and things that are going on and chat amongst themselves type thing, and they film it and broadcast it. They've had a couple things come out of that show in the past that was just a little bit wacky. A couple months back, one of the women basically said that she believes in creation, stuff like that, and she doesn't know if the world is flat or if it's round. It's something that she had never really looked into and studied, and therefore she doesn't know. And if her son asked that of her, she would have to, let's say, well, let's go to the library and look things up. The kind of point being that, you know, look, I have kids. Those are more important to me than the latest scientific research and science and things like that. And so that's why she may not be versed in these things.
Although, in fairness, if you think the issue of whether or not the Earth is flat or round
Is modern scientific discoveries.
I don't know how you got past second grade.
Yeah. But here's one that's actually on the opposite end of the spectrum. And what's interesting isn't so much the comment, but what's come up because of it. They've had a couple articles written about this. Joy, I think her name is Behar, was on that, and basically...
It's Bear.
Bear? Okay.
But, you know, last week I said that it was David Icke.
Yeah,
and
which,
I said Icke
which I've
as
seen
a
you've
joke.
been inundated with.
I said Icke as a joke, but I would have pronounced it wrong anyway because I would have pronounced it as Ick, and it's actually David Icke.
Okay.
So I would have got it wrong anyway, but I did the Icke as a joke. But thank you for those people who corrected. And specifically, some people sent some links to some good videos. And there's one in particular somebody sent, and sorry to jump all over your news story, that was kind of a documentary about, very briefly touched on, he used to be a footballer and then a sports announcer and then a nutter. But it followed him through this tour in Canada where there was a group that was essentially trying to shut him down at every turn. And while I have no problem at all accepting that this guy is a complete loon, those people looked insanely foolish and actually did nothing but help his cause.
Really?
I mean, it was, let's dress up in a reptilian outfit and go to his book signing and hit him with a pie.
Yeah.
Let's threaten the radio stations, you know, if they put him on to have any kind of discussions at all. Now, in fairness, you know, I'm not up on Canadian laws, so I'll probably skew this a little with American laws on free speech. But the radio station is completely within their rights to say, no, we don't want you to have you on here. I mean, they're a business, and if they don't think that what he has to say is going to be good for their business, then they should shoot him down. He doesn't have an intrinsic right to appear on their radio station. But they did invite him, and it was only when he showed up there that they said, now we've reviewed the material and we don't think we should have you on. Well, you're within your rights, but you should have reviewed the material before you invited him on.
Yeah.
What you did was you've got this nut job who shows up and with a film crew, and now you look really stupid. You look like you are trying to suppress his conspiracy theory, and it just played horribly. They had like this city council of folks sitting around a table who were, we want to make sure they make this clear. We're all here in opposition to David Icke, and we don't want him, spreading his message in our town because we consider it anti-Semitic and, various other things. And of course, one gentleman's there. He's like, well, I don't really know that much about David Icke. Can you tell me what it is about the message that we're objecting to and everything else? And they're like, no, we're not here to discuss or debate what the man has to say. We've already made up our minds, and if you're not here to also prevent him from speaking, then you can just leave.
Wow.
That's really
shockingly bad.
Yes. and I like to encourage discussion, and I like open-mindedness and consideration. I wouldn't want to go sit through one of his lectures either. There are things that he says that I think are worth attacking and pointing out, but I'm not. The censorship thing just kind of gets to me. But also this idea that he's anti-Semitic. I'm not convinced. When the Anti-Defamation League tends to, and oh boy, I like you guys, but you tend to overreact. When David Icke or somebody else starts talking about this reptilian global conspiracy and mentions that some of the wealthy Jews who have control of certain industries are in on it, that's not anti-Semitic. If he said that all Jews were the reptiles or all the reptiles were Jews, okay, now you've got a case. But when he's saying no, the people who control the world in these various areas, they're all reptilian, and some of them happen to be Jewish, he's not being anti-Semitic. Get over it. You guys look so bad in that documentary.
And the fact that you even have to come on and officially put some kind of refutation or saying, we think he's anti-Semitic because he's a complete nut job.
Yeah.
You should be able to just safely ignore that completely. And when somebody comes to you and says, my God, did you know that he's saying that Jews are, reptilian?
I think
they should be able to just laugh at them and close the case. So, but
and then they interviewed Alex Jones, and interestingly, it was kind of cool because they filmed him actually walking out of this studio into the hallway and then having a conversation out in the hallway. So it kind of felt like homey. And then I remembered, oh wait, it's Alex, who pointed out that David Icke's actually doing him a disservice because he's got it all right about the global conspiracy. And then he goes and puts a turd in the punch bowl by saying that they're reptiles. That's his phrase, not mine. I'm just quoting Alex on that. So yeah,
that's a good one.
I loved it.
I'll have to use that sometime.
Kudos to you, Alex. I laughed twice for your turd in the punch bowl line. And he's right. He's not right about this global conspiracy stuff as far as I can tell, but that destroys it. So
yeah.
He thinks that either David Icke's either insane or has bought into the conspiracy and is actually working. So this is the way conspiracy theory stuff works. There is this global conspiracy, and I know who did it. And then somebody else comes along, and they know who did it too, but it's a different somebody.
Yeah.
So now they're both actually in on the conspiracy, trying to undermine each other.
Yeah, they're trying to prove that each other is in the conspiracy, and
Ta-da.
He's part of it. So.
Anyway, enough recapping of conspiracy from last week. What was this story with
Joy Behar? Basically, she's a comedian who was on the show on, it says Wednesday, and this was January 10th, so it might have been on the 9th, I assume. And she basically said, I have a theory that you can't find any saints anymore because of psychotropic medication. I think that in the old days, the saints were hearing voices, and they didn't have any Thorazine to calm them down, Behar said on ABC's National Chat Fest. now that we have all this medication available to us, you can't find a saint anymore. And the spokesman for The View, now again, that's the comment that was said. She's a comedian on a daytime chat show.
Not very funny, which is why she's on daytime chat shows.
But still, I mean, that's pretty good.
It's amusing.
And typically with comedians, especially, aimed at an adult audience, which, I mean, this isn't exactly, not kid-friendly, but it's not exactly for the children specifically. They're typically going to offend somebody out there, just jokingly. And so that's kind of how I'd view this. But apparently, they've had calls into the show, and they've got this article write-up about it, and the spokesman for The View said Joy was just joking. She said very clearly it was just a theory. She has lots of really funny theories that she kind of gives on a daily basis. She's a Catholic, and she loves to talk about the Catholic Church. It's one of her favorite subjects. So kind of trying to cover her up and saying, it's not that bad. It's really not, it's not a big deal. She's a comedian on a daytime talk show. That should kind of lighten the message anyway.
You know why people are upset, though? Because they know she's right.
And actually, it kind of goes back to, I remember doing a story on the show. This was maybe 5 years ago. Who knows?
Showing off, huh?
Well, got to do it when I can. When I get the chance, got to put it in there. But anyway, it was in one of these churches in somewhere in the East. Can't remember. But there was this famous prophet lady or something who would always have these mystical visions, stuff like that, and people would come to her advice. And they found out that where this church, I mean, it was a real church, actually existed. She actually existed and everything. And they found out that they did studies on it, and the gas in the rocks and stuff like that below that, if you spend a lot of time in there, you're going to whack up your mind. And so it's possible that, if she was constantly living in this church, she was always exposed to these, noxious gases coming from the rocks and whatever. She was just a little bit nutty. So.
It reminds me, I remember scenes, and this scene's been played a few times, so it's nothing original, but you'll have somebody who, is seeing something like a ghost or whatever, and somebody else will reach out and take off their glasses and wipe it and put it back on. And, oh, wow, where'd it go? I can see clearly now.
Yeah. Yep. Thus the drugs. Behar's co-host, Elizabeth Hesselbeck, blasted Behar's theory, noting that the late Mother Teresa, who has not yet been given sainthood, is a modern example of a saint. Behar mentioned the recently revealed letters that suggest Mother Teresa struggled with doubts about her faith and contended that the Catholic Church's standards for sainthood have changed due to medical advances. That's why Mother Teresa had issues. Let's not forget she didn't really believe 100% like those saints who were hearing voices. She didn't hear voices. So.
Yeah, and I realize that the Catholics get to make up their own rules about who they get to make a saint. But in any real sense, I think in order for somebody to qualify for sainthood, and I realize yes, this is an atheist saying it. I'd like to think that they'd have to be good people. And not some evil harpy who encourages suffering around the world as, God really wants you to feel the pain thoroughly so you appreciate your life. Don't come to me with Mother Teresa was a saint because I'm not buying it. Yeah. And now, of course, they've kind of built up this out now because of the letters where she expresses that she may not have actually believed for most of this time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So evidently, all those evil things that she did with regard to suffering were her atheist side spilling over because we're just really bad.
But of course, other people have to still back up Mother Teresa because of this, and saying clearly she is no church historian. Saying she didn't believe 100% is a simplistic and superficial reading of the news. Why would you spend 60 years in a slum in the name of Jesus out of love for God if you don't believe in Jesus or God 100%? Well, the problem there is, what if she didn't do it for the love of Jesus and for the good of God for 60 years? What if she were doing it because she thought she was doing a good job to actually help people? That's a possibility. Even if she didn't believe, she could have been doing it because she thought she was doing a really good job. And the argument could be made that she did. So.
And the argument could be made that she didn't.
True.
I happen to think that she didn't. And I don't think, see, here's the thing, and it doesn't matter whether she believed in a God actually, or believed that God was telling her to do things, or that she was doing stuff for God. She, as Daniel Dennett has put it, would have been somebody who believed in belief. That and not just strictly accepting Catholic dogma. I don't want to oversimplify it, but believed that both Catholic dogma and these broader principles of a God and helping people were good things. So in some level, I would agree that she probably felt that she was doing good things. The problem is that her definition of good and helping differ drastically from mine, because if you bought into this idea that suffering is a good thing, that we should, because it makes you feel more alive or teaches you more about life or makes you appreciate the moments when you're not suffering, that to me is a rationalization whose only real purpose can be the promotion of more suffering. As a matter of fact, if that's your mentality, then what you'd really want is almost constant suffering. Because the more you suffer and the smaller the gaps are where you're not suffering,
the more you appreciate those gaps.
The more precious those gaps are.
Yeah.
I mean, it just has to be that way. Now, I differ from her in that I'd like to see us do everything we can to eliminate suffering entirely. Let's broaden those gaps of periods without suffering. And then maybe, when we do have to suffer a little bit, instead of appreciating how much better the non-suffering time is, we'll be able to go, ooh, we're pretty sure this will be over soon.
Yeah, I've never been a big fan of the whole suffering for its own sake, or you learn better, you appreciate something if you had to work hard for it type mentality. I can understand the concept and the rationalization of it.
I have no problem with that.
But I still view it. This was kind of going back to, again, a while back. I was reading over. I can't remember the guy's name now, but he did the different books with Jesus. Oh, good Lord, I can't remember the name of it now.
Robin Price.
No, The Case for Christ.
Oh, Lee Strobel.
Yeah, The Case for Christ. And basically saying that we are suffering and there is pain and suffering on this earth because then we can learn better from it. There are certain lessons that we learn better through suffering. And I disagree with that in the sense that a parent will have their children suffer in a certain way because there's no other way to do things. As in, you will make your newborn infant suffer through vaccination shots where doctors have to take them away and stick needles into them so that they don't have a greater suffering later on from polio.
Sure. I mean, that's kind of a practical...
Exactly. And so if there were a better way to do it where the child didn't have to be taken away and didn't have to cry, that would be preferable.
Yeah.
God, being almighty and all-knowing, can figure out a way that we can learn everything without having to suffer. We do it because it's necessary. There's no other practical way of doing this. There's no real practical way to learn history without just plain reading and studying.
Yeah. So
you've got to go through that. But God could just plant the knowledge in. Absolutely no suffering, no time taken, and you learn it.
Yeah,
you don't.
Or as this omnipotent creator, controller of the universe could just frickin' eliminate suffering entirely.
Exactly. And if you're an all-loving, all-powerful being, that should be the goal. That should be the goal.
And if he can't, then clearly there's some set of rules that's greater than God. Oh, I'd really like to eliminate suffering, but, there's this rule book that says I can't.
Hey, the Daily Show's coming back on. God's got to watch it. So
speaking of eliminating saints with Thorazine, there's this. One of the books that I'm going through now is a collection of the old Dial and Atheist stuff.
Okay.
Evidently, groups from American atheists around locally. Back before there was this, internet and text messaging and YouTube. When people would actually pick up a phone and dial a number just to hear a joke.
Yeah.
Which kind of baffles me. There was also Dial an Atheist. And what they did was they collected a bunch of the different messages over the years years. And Frank Zindler in Ohio was the one who did this one and put this book together. There's some great stuff in there. I'm going to have to email him about getting the rights to read some bits of it. But there's a song in there which is a rewrite of Jesus Loves the Little Children. And, it starts off normally, Jesus loves the little children, but it's Jesus loves the little zygotes. And then it goes from there to talking about how Jesus likes to punish the little children with measles and mumps and chickenpox. And it's done subtly so that, I read it a couple times to really catch all that they were saying, but it's beautiful in that it ends with, but he cannot give them smallpox anymore. And that's, I realize that technically we haven't completely eradicated, but because there's some nut jobs out there who are saying don't vaccinate your kids.
Yes.
So but
and
in general,
more and more of those people are coming out of the woodwork too.
In general, though, I'm vaccinated against smallpox. So all of you out there who'd like for God to demonstrate His power could simply pray for Him to hit me with smallpox. That'd be pretty good. A disease that we've pretty much eradicated that I'm supposed to be immune to now. If God could hit me with smallpox, I think that'd be, it wouldn't be proof, but it'd be a start.
It'd be a step in the right direction.
I don't think your God can give me as much as a hangnail, so.
Yeah, so go ahead, God, hit him.
Yeah, smite me.
Prove to me by giving him smallpox.
Hey, I should have thought of that.
All right, another one. This one's just...
Oh, we could make him regrow your hair.
I'm not too sure if that's meant to be a joke or
not. Full-on fro, just overnight.
A big afro. I wake up tomorrow morning with a big afro.
It's God. He can do it. Doesn't he? He's got to have a sense of humor. I've seen the platypus.
All right. Okay. Another story here. And again, phone lines are open if you got any questions, comments.
Which reminds me, somebody called a minute ago wanting us to cover what was going on at the Unitarian Universalist Church again. I don't have all the details with me, but I think that it begins at 7 o'clock tonight. There is a minister who's a former creationist who's now an evangelist for evolution, who's giving some speech there. It's at the UU Church on Grover, which is between Lamar, Burnett, 45th and 49th, I think. But that's all the info I have on it.
Sure, a quick Google search on Unitarian Universalist Austin would probably bring it up.
Actually, you can look up. It was in yesterday's Statesman.
Okay.
So there's an article about it in the Statesman from yesterday. So.
Okay. All right, and here's a quick story that came up January 9th. That's just kind of one of these strange, funny things. This was in Ohio. A man who believed he bore the mark of the beast used a circular saw to cut off one hand. And then, as if that weren't enough, to prove to God that he really did love and trust and he's a devoted follower, he microwaved it. Apparently, that's what's really needed to really get the demons out.
And I heard that he would have cut off the other one, but then he didn't have anything to grip the saw with.
The man in his mid-20s was calm when county sheriff's deputies arrived Saturday in his North Idaho town. He was in protective custody and mental health units. It had been somewhat cooked by the time the deputy arrived. He put a tourniquet on his arm before so he didn't bleed to death. That kind of mental illness is just sad.
Now, see, what was this reported?
And it also kind of, when he points out, hospital spokesman Lisa
This is
something.
the Associated Press.
Yeah.
How dare you email me about how I'm attacking religion? This guy just took somebody whose beliefs were obviously way more sincere than any of you guys.
Yeah.
And basically said he was nuts. Oh, this must be mental illness. He cut off his hand. It must be mental illness. She drowned her baby.
Which goes right back to the previous story. When do you say, at what point do you say God actually speaks to you? You know, if God says to do good things, then it's God speaking to you. You should listen to that. That's a cherished gift that you have, this personal relationship with God. But as soon as God says, cut off your hand or kill your kids or, quit your job, then it's like, dude, you're just nuts.
Yeah, as long as God's telling you things that I agree with,
Exactly. Then it's okay.
yeah, then you're a real Christian. As soon as he starts telling you stuff that sounds crazy to me, well, you're crazy.
You're nuts.
I'm glad we have such established and reliable criteria for determining who's nuts and who's not.
Exactly. And again, after he had cut off his own hand with a circular saw, put it in the microwave to partially cook it.
Was he going to eat it?
They don't say. But again, it's funny that the hospital spokesman would not say whether an attempt was made to reattach the hand.
And to the doctor, I'd just like to say, well done.
Permanent handy snack. Just gnaw off your fingers. All right, and that's mostly all that I've got. I think you said you might have one or two things. We can hit these other stories if there's really a need for them, but they're not all that critical. Again, phone number's on your screen. If you've got anything, questions, comments, we'd definitely love to hear from you. As Matt was saying, it's good to hear what people think and why they believe and why you think other people should believe. It's good to hear. It's a good discussion.
So I guess we could just probably end the show right here and not say anything for the next 45 minutes or so. Let's just do that. We'll just.
We're waiting for your calls.